my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O God, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. I invite you to contemplate a question with me in these next moments. You may choose to close your eyes or allow your gaze to soften and drop to a spot in front of you. If you choose, take a deep breath with me now, fully inflating your lungs, pausing to hold that breath at the top of your inhale, and then fully exhale and allow your breath to return to its natural rhythm. What does the word friend mean to you? Does a nicely packaged definition or a list of qualities like humor, loyalty, curiosity come to mind? Perhaps you mentally whisper names or see faces in your mind's eye. You might notice other words like good, close, distant, former. Do you notice any emotions? Perhaps love or frustration, anger, regret, sadness, joy. Are you replaying memories, making plans, or projecting what that friendship will be? What do you feel in your body? Do you notice any areas of tightness, expansion, warmth, or tingling? Just a moment more to notice what you're experiencing. And now please take another full breath, holding at the top, and then exhale, opening your eyes or lifting your gaze. While we have moments of pure and uncomplicated joy with our friends, the reality we experience runs a gamut of emotions and reactions. Some friendships last, some falter, and others fail. Sometimes it's only through a seismic event that we notice how and how deeply we experience friendship. A few weeks ago, someone I hadn't talked to in a long time reached out to personally convey the news that our friend Dee had died. For a moment that encroached on eternity, after she uttered the words, Dee passed away, everything stopped. Only her voice on the other end of the line, breaking into my silence, asking, "Are you still there?" restarted time, and I began to breathe again. With that breath came a tidal wave of grief. For an unnameable reason, perhaps for distraction or comfort, I sought out a concrete understanding of friend. The Oxford English Dictionary definition is a person with whom one develops a close and informal relationship of mutual trust and intimacy, often with an adjective indicating the closeness of the relationship. I learned that the etymology can be traced back through Old English, linked to Dutch and German, from a root meaning to love. I perused science to understand the role of our brain structure and neurotransmitters in social connections, and searched for how genetics, upbringing, social milieu, traumas, and successes impact relationships. While all of this made logical sense, nothing illuminated the power of my connection with Dee. I then turned my attention to sacred texts, stumbling across the words of mystics and philosophers who sought a path to wholeness, repair, and reconciliation in our relationships. This was the dimension, a heartfelt spiritual connection that I needed to name. Dee and I had disagreed, argued, and reconciled. We'd gone through periods of closeness and distance. And it is with and through this lens of friendship that I invite you to join me in contemplating today's gospel. The passage in Mark begins with Jesus teaching that he would endure suffering, be rejected, killed, and rise after 3 days. Rather than teaching in parables, Jesus said all this quite openly. I used to interpret this to simply mean that Jesus spoke in plain and direct language with resoluteness of purpose. And this is perhaps true. But this also feels too easy an answer, treating Jesus as God with just a dash of humanity, rather than a fully divine incarnation. What if these words spoken so openly also point to Jesus' vulnerability to share the weight and the anguish of his path to the cross? What if he also sought to invite, perhaps even plead with his disciples, to remain at his side, to witness his suffering and death? How often have we turned to our friends when facing a life-altering change or decision, perhaps a marriage, divorce, job or career change, or a cross-country move? We lay out our challenges, fears, and pain in hopes that our friends will embrace our vulnerability, committing to a holy witnessing and presence, even to the things they cannot understand. The Irish poet, philosopher, and priest John O'Donoghue has written of a friend in the Celtic worldview called Anam Cara in Gaelic, which translates to English as soul friend. And Anam Cara embodies a deep soul connection built on a foundation of mutual vulnerability and love, by placing their own agendas aside, inviting curiosity and holding space for the other. And Anam Cara creates a circle of trust, understanding, and acceptance. It's exactly in these moments of deep vulnerability, of need, that a soul friend's presence is needed most. But Peter, the rock, the first to express faith in Jesus as Messiah in Matthew, challenges Jesus' teaching, taking him aside and rebuking him. I imagine all of us can recall when our fixed ideas or expectations of our friends have seemingly been shattered by their words, actions, or decisions. We think we have them figured out, and we know how their stories will unfold. Yet for a moment, imagine how confounding these words might have been to Peter. He had left his life behind to follow this man he believed to be the Messiah who would overthrow earthly powers. He had witnessed wondrous healings, miracles, and profound teachings that subverted the status quo. Peter's words aren't captured, but I imagine we could all think about what we might have said to Jesus were we in Peter's place. This is crazy talk. You don't need to die on that cross. When have we, like Peter, challenged our friends when their actions or words seem so dissonant with what we understand of them? And when is this challenge a wise action? When might it mean that we do not see our friends' true nature or calling? Or when we are holding them back by our own mental constructs, needs, and expectations? But turning and looking at his disciples, he rebuked Peter. Jesus calls out that Peter has missed the mark. The other disciples have been brought into this rebuke. There is much that they have also not understood about Jesus. With these words is the beginning of a strong correction and an affirmation of Jesus' calling. He goes on further to say, "Get behind me, Satan. You are setting your mind not on divine things, but on human things." I sense deep heartbreak here. Perhaps there is a feeling of betrayal, that his appeal for a companionship and understanding has been rejected. Perhaps Jesus is expressing his own deep grief about the path he knew was before him. And perhaps there was another aspect to Peter's initial rebuke that acted as a mirror to Jesus' own humanity. What if Peter's words unflinchingly reflected Jesus' human desire to rise in glory without the crucifixion? These words then seem not only a rebuke to Peter, but a rallying cry to himself, an affirmation that no matter the cost, Jesus is choosing the cross for the salvation of his friends and us all. If any wish to become my followers, let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. Jesus seems to be moving his attention away from Peter at this point, yet no door has been closed. The any to whom he speaks includes Peter, the disciples, and the crowd. While the disagreement does not seem to be publicly prolonged, there's also no mention of a resolution to their exchange, no indication of heartfelt discussions or apologies to show how reconciliation took place. We know that Jesus takes Peter, James, and John to a mountain 6 days later where they witness his transfiguration. Clearly, some sort of reconciliation has begun, yet we are left with this gap, no model on which to understand how healing began after their heated and very public exchange. Too often, we wonder what we should be, mired in our personal situations, work, or status. We fret about what we should do or say and rush to words or actions that might cause harm. Or we even fail to take the great risk of friendship or to fully give of ourselves to these most important relationships. Psychologist Dr. Marissa G. Franco notes in her book, Platonic, which explores research on the value and practice of friendship, that we live in a society where it is socially acceptable to cancel time with our friends for work, but not to cancel work commitments for our friends. If we really think about trying to live our lives aligned with our values after the example of Jesus, this is quite troubling. What if, instead, we valued our friendships deeply and thus concerned ourselves with how we should be? The deepest essence of a soul friend, an anamkara, is in witnessing and being with the other. It's inviting curiosity, wonder, and acceptance while navigating a wilderness of contradictions and hurts. By offering sacred presence, we can acknowledge another's deep longing to be seen. This subverts our conditioning, rebels against what most self-help books might tell us, and sometimes challenges our innermost understandings of self. In every sense, this is hard and holy work. As we observe this Lenten season, we are invited to accompany Jesus on his path to the cross. We are also invited to allow the seeds of our contemplations to bear fruit in our relationships with others, to learn how to hold space for each other and ourselves. When we fully participate in the complex and holy work of companionship, knowing that while we will hurt each other, our vulnerability and love can guide us to reconciliation and repair. This is the reality of anamkara, soul friend, companioning each other even into the farthest reaches of our human existence, from joy to sorrow, through laughter and tears, from birth to the time of death. As Claire recently described in a sermon, this is how we practice being with, after the example of Jesus himself. I wish to close today with a blessing from John O'Donohue. May you be blessed with good friends. May you learn to be a good friend to yourself. May you be able to journey to that place in your soul where there is great love, warmth, feeling, and forgiveness. May this change you. May it transfigure that which is negative, distant, or cold in you. May you be brought into the real passion, kinship, and affinity of belonging. May you treasure your friends. May you be good to them, and may you be there for them. May they bring you all the blessings, challenges, truth, and light you need for your journey. May you never be isolated. May you always be in the gentle nest of belonging with your Anam Cara. Amen.